Hi, this is Scott from SaaS Startup Stories, and today's show is sponsored by ActiveCampaign, the world's #1 email marketing and automation platform, and the system that I use to run my entire business. If you'd like to get started with ActiveCampaign and take advantage of the best current promo that they're running, then go to scottdudley.com/AC and fill out the form. Today, my special guest is Pierce Buckley. Pierce is based in Berlin and the CEO and co-founder at Babelforce, which is the #1 most flexible platform for enterprise contact centers. Pierce, are you ready to rock and roll?
Absolutely, Scott.
Perfect. All right, let's get stuck into it. So we'll start off with your background and what initially got you interested in starting a SaaS company.
Yeah, so my start in the software industry was actually building AI models. So natural language understanding, speech processing, as well as like pattern recognition and other kinds of classification algorithms. So yeah, I started at the super geeky end of things. I was originally a mathematician, and that's what I trained as, and that's where I started my academic research. I didn't actually join the software industry until I was 30. So 30
Wow.
years old. So fairly late to the game, actually. But coming from this kind of academic background, I found my way into the thick end of things. And my very first business card, you won't believe this, Scott, but my very first business card was actually titled "Machine Learning Mathematician." Which I wish I had kept one of those, because this was like the 2000 or so, which was way before things like ML, machine learning, and AI, and all that stuff were trending topics. So that's how I got started into the business in general. And why a SaaS company was your question? So, well, I often think about this, and I genuinely feel like I was compelled to start a company. So I mean, the question almost makes me think of the much broader question of like, is there really is there really willpower, like free will at all, right? Does it exist? Because of my background with my family, most of the people I knew, my parents, my uncles and aunts, they were almost all self-employed when I was growing up. And so when the whole time that I was working for other people in other companies, I was always thinking about starting a company. Why SaaS particularly? Well, when I started out in the software industry was just about the same time that NetSuite and Salesforce were founded. So I
Right. Long
think,
time ago.
right? So like the very beginnings in a way of the SaaS
Yeah.
model. And once, and then soon after that, the beginnings of cloud and virtualization. So when you join the two together, like it became pretty clear that cloud-based subscription, right, subscription-oriented models were really, a fantastic engine for innovation. And I definitely knew pretty early already, maybe by 2005 or so, it was pretty clear to me that that's the kind of company that I wanted to start.
Okay. Most of the people on this show have probably been non-tech founders. So I'm just sort of curious if you think there's much of an advantage being a tech founder.
Well, I think it depends on the product. Like, so in our case, obviously it's in my DNA,
Yeah.
and in the DNA of my co-founders to go after these kinds of tech problems that we solve, So if I
Yeah.
was a non-tech founder, I probably would have a different kind of company. Who knows? Maybe I would have started in my 20s on a B2C company instead of a B2B company, right? In deep tech. Uh, I think it's swings and roundabouts, right? So
Yeah.
if you're in this kind of business and in the kind of area we're in, then it's definitely an advantage. And certainly, I think in solving the big problems you have to solve, it's useful to have a background in decision making. I think that helps for sure.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I see Babelforce just went through VC funding. That's obviously super exciting. Tell us a bit about the experience and how you got the business off the ground.
Yeah, that is exciting, and this round is really helping us to scale up even faster. I'll start with how we got the business off the ground, as you asked. So, well, I actually founded the company with two great guys, so Christian Foster and Timo Friedl. I mean, there would be no company if I had not met both these fellas. I already had been actually trying to get a team together for years before us three came together, but I never had the right constellation of people. the people and skills kind of mixture. It has to be really, near perfect in order for things to gel together and really, really go for it. So we formally founded the company in 2013. Although the early period really was a long incubation period. None of us were salaried at the time, and nobody was on staff. So it was really about getting things started. But we did know from the very beginning that the kind of product we were going to build was a huge platform. And so we knew we were going to put in 4 or 5 years of software development before we were really going to have a product ready for the target market. So our target market are enterprise contact centers. So the contact centers are pretty big companies.
Yeah.
And we knew it was going to be a lot of pre-work and pre-development to put into it. And that's one of the main reasons why we decided to bootstrap the company, actually. So, it was many years before we did our first VC round. So this round we're doing now is not our first one.
Yeah.
So this decision to bootstrap was based on a few things. First of all, when you talk to very early stage investors, angels and others, you pretty quickly realize that the amount of money that's available is not that much, really. And certainly for what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it turned out that we actually had more than that money ourselves. So now none of us three are wealthy, right? We were all normal salaried guys. In fact, Timo was still doing his master's and basically working part-time. So it's not like we had loads of money. We couldn't go to daddy and make a call and get money or anything like that, right? But what we basically did was we bet our houses on it. So there's a real skin in the game.
Yeah.
So that and it turned out there was another thing in the mixture, is that any investor who would invest at that stage did not have the same alignment as we had. So they didn't have the patience to spend 4 or 5 years building a product. And I think there has to be strong alignment at every stage when you have an investor. There has to be really strong alignment in your goals and especially on your timelines. And I think in the first phase for us, it was really, really correct to bootstrap, although a very hard decision also. I mean, those early years are difficult when you're doing it on your own steam.
Absolutely. Yeah.
On your second part of the question, on the experience of getting VC funding. Yeah, I mean, that's an exciting process. It's not the first round now, so I'm accustomed to it, of course, at this point. But I mean, there's so many things about it, really, so many parts of that whole process. One thing, I guess, is my experience is you have to think of it like any other funnel. You don't get knocked back because you get rejected. Don't get knocked back because you get negative feedback because somebody doesn't even bother to respond. Just build your funnel wider, just like you would in sales. Just, so assume that and if your product is very specific like ours, then you have to expect to go through hundreds potentially of people. And I've had this in the first rounds. I've had it now in this round as well, where you really need to speak to a lot of investors. And I think it's good to accept that from the beginning.
Yeah.
And yeah. So, I mean, I guess the other thing around it is that having high quality discussions with investors is really important, and it's worth putting in a lot of effort before even going to talk to a VC. I think, I would say, in my experience now, if you think your pitch deck is done, then take it apart and rebuild it, and then talk to 1 or 2 friendly VCs. Then, when you realize it's really not good enough, then rebuild it again, and do the same with your financial model. Because you need to be prepared to be prodded and poked, and to have your storytelling taken apart, and have all of your metrics and everything taken apart. You need to be ready for that. I think it's well worth putting in. I think planning with many months of pre-effort is really, really, really good. I mean, the great thing is when you do that, you get such fantastic information from talking to VCs, right? Because I mean, the data availability is really skewed in favor of VCs, right? They see 1,000 pitches a year, right? And they have dozens or maybe even sometimes more portfolio companies, and you as a startup see much less. So having those high quality discussions, you learn, even the ones that don't work out, you learn a huge amount from.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so with that in mind, how did you get your first 10 customers through the doors?
Well, in this incubation phase I mentioned, we actually built a pre-pilot kind of version of of our product.
Yep.
And we tested that out in 2 markets. So the short answer would be trial and error, actually. So we actually after running a full pilot trials on the first one, we actually threw it out. We realized it was not going to allow us to achieve our goals. Again, this is the nice thing about in this early phase. If you can do it, if you are not on somebody else's timeline, you have the time, right, to do experiments and really think things through. And I think this was super valuable for us. So that's what we did first. We added a bunch of customers on that pilot, and then we actually decided, no, we're not going to do that. And then by about 2014, we had settled on the version of so it's about 1.5 years in, we had settled on the version of the platform that we were really going to build. And we built that actually for the next 3 years. So we didn't add any enterprise customers until 2017. And then getting those first customers in with the old-fashioned way, basically cold outreach. Right?
Yeah.
It's we're a relatively big ticket item with kind of average of over 100,000 a year contract value.
Okay.
A lot of 50,000s, but a lot over 250,000 as well.
Yeah.
So in this kind of model, cold outreach is really, really important. And the other thing we did early on is that we're an integration platform as well as what we do in a core way. So a lot of companies use us as a kind of an integration middleware beside the core product. And because of that, we pre-built integrations to some big platforms like Zendesk. And so by using integration marketing, essentially, so marketing through that integration, was a way to get us in front of people who really wanted to talk to us as well. So both of those methods were the ones that were really important in the early days.
Nice. Okay. All right. So before we actually talk about the BabelForce product, I'm very curious as to where you got the name BabelForce from, or what it means, and how you come up with it.
Oh, that's a good question. Well, you probably know, or most people will know of the Tower of Babel or Tower of Babel, right? In the Bible, the story.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the let's say the seed of the idea.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's about the ability to communicate. Well, before Yahweh in the Old Testament destroys the tower, I mean, humans were essentially building a tower into the sky, right? Which is what upset the jealous God of the time. And they had the ability to communicate with each other, and therefore they could surpass, whatever they wanted to do, right? They could develop amazing innovations. And the force part is just about power. So essentially, you could look at it as the power to communicate.
Okay, nice. I like that. All right, so I guess now we could talk a bit about the BabelForce product and what sets it apart from the competition, I guess.
Yeah. So BabelForce is a no-code development platform for creating customer experiences on the phone and through all kinds of messaging channels. So, I mean, you'll know this yourself, Scott. I mean, and everybody listening will know that you get a fridge delivered and it breaks down and you need to get it returned. And then you phone up somebody or contact them by email or whatever to find out if the fridge can be returned within the guarantee, or you go online and you're looking for help and you get offered a call back because you're a very important customer or the thing you're trying to deal with is complex. So what we essentially do is we provide the kit in the background that makes all that stuff possible.
Okay.
And the way we do it, and this is what makes us different, the way we do it is we don't provide a superficial SaaS product where you can do a few settings. What we do is essentially like a development kit, but without the coding. So our promise to our customers is if you've got complex customer communications, service, and sales processes, then we provide you with the ability to everything you need to create whatever process you want as if you were a developer. So we're trying to give the power of development of coding to people who don't code.
Yeah.
And I think why did we settle on this model? So I think, most people in the software industry will know at the moment that one of the biggest difficulties out there is the availability and cost of developers and DevOps engineers.
Oh yeah.
Right? I mean, you cannot you can pay these people their weight in platinum, right? And you can hardly find them in the market. It's just incredibly overheated. And
Yeah.
that's not going to change, because I think there's a fundamental economic driver, in my view, that's been going, right, that's been, driving innovation and change for the last while, which is there's never going to be enough. Again, it's never like there's never going to be a turnaround in this, because the curve of the need for software, for like complex software to be implemented, grows far faster than the talent pool that's
Yeah.
even available, even if you could train them.
Yep.
And so that was one fundamental like realization. Early on, 2014 already, we had drawn out that picture, and we thought, okay, so if you're in a complex area of a business like the contact center, people are going to need to build algorithms. How are they going to build algorithms in a reliable way and maintain them, with the shortage of the technical resources to do it? And then we thought, okay, the best thing would be is if the people in the business who already run the processes, right? There's process geeks in every business who really keep the show on the road. They're not necessarily developers, right? They're the operations people. In our case, the operations people in the contact center. Those folks already do complicated things. If we could give them the tools where they could create their own algorithms and their own integrations, then we'd be giving them a kind of superpower. And that's essentially our USP.
Okay, interesting. All right, so if we just switch gears a little bit, just curious how you're using email marketing to convert trials to customers and to retain existing customers.
So actually, we use email, of course, for many things.
Yep.
Email marketing doesn't help us much in converting trials to customers. Email marketing helps us more in the long period of time in which we have to educate people before they're even ready to have a trial or to even think about buying.
Okay.
So if you think about our big ticket sales to like a complex part of a company, people might be aware of us for 18 months before they get to a position in their business, or an initiative where they want to buy us.
Yeah.
So email marketing is really core in the people who are already kind of in our reach, if you like, within our reach, and who are within our audience. We need to keep them informed, and that's where email marketing really comes in for us. Now, obviously, there's a certain number of emails sent to people while they're in a trial.
Yeah.
But more important during the trial phase is actually customers will engage with the product. They will ask questions of our customer success team, and the customer success team will be sending out answers to those, but they will be sending standard material. They'll be sending videos and pre-prepared content and so on. And that's actually the main thing that draws people in. So the customer success team, in a way, is part of the sales organization. I mean, not formally, but largely speaking, those experts talking to experts is what actually moves the sale along. I mean, there are other elements too. Obviously, account executives are doing their work and so on. There's a lot of elements involved, but that's the key communication that's really moving. Say, when you're talking about from trial to purchase, it's one of the really important parts.
Yeah, it's a lot different for a high ticket product, I imagine, than a low ticket product. So it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, Scott, because in the beginning, we did a lot of the classic things you would do for a low ticket B2B company as well, right? Because you don't know anything, do you? Right? You're like the first human when you've got a new company, in a way. So and yeah, all of those typical things that work well for the low ticket items, which I had done in the past. Actually, I had some lower ticket products in my history as well.
Yeah.
And they're not as important then, as the weighting of them within the marketing mix is just not as important. But keeping people informed with the right content at the different parts of the funnel through email and through other channels is really key. I mean, that's absolutely crucial to us. Just it serves a different function in our case.
But would there possibly be an opportunity for you to introduce a low ticket product that then ascends them into that high ticket product? So if you know what I mean, so they start off at the low ticket and then end up in the high ticket. Is there a possibility in your business model that might be able to consider that, or not?
We actually did that, Scott. Yeah, and in some cases, that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Right. Like there are a lot of products where there's a low ticket version of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in our case, funny enough, it doesn't really work out too well.
Okay.
And the reason is that all these things are obvious in hindsight, but not in the beginning. So we actually did that, as I said as well. We did that experiment. the reason is that if you sell a product that's really for complex needs in the enterprise, then the minimal viable version of it is already a fairly big thing. It has to meet all of those enterprise requirements.
Okay.
And it has to go through the scrutiny of an enterprise procurement.
Yeah, I see.
That's not something that a small version fits into. In our particular case, it doesn't. And the other thing is, from an investment point of view, what we've realized is anytime we've had sufficient investment to really go for it and go to the next step, it's also been clear that if we have that investment, not have, but let's say we proportion that investment and we do some of it on a more packaged version of the product, then we realize we're investing along the wrong dimensions. The real pull in our market and for our kind of product is entirely skewed towards those enterprise needs.
Yeah.
And so every million we would put in the other direction is a million we're not putting along into the innovations that we really
Yeah, I
need.
guess focusing on the wrong things makes sense. Yeah, I understand. Okay.
It's hard. It's very hard, but
Yeah.
focus. Potentially, I come to realize focus is maybe more important than anything else. Is like having your line, having your lane, and sticking to it is really crucial.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, what's the single biggest challenge that you believe new founders are experiencing right now with growing SaaS companies?
Um, there are so many challenges, obviously, but there always are.
Yeah.
I think the one I mentioned earlier that everybody in the world faces about the availability of the right technical resources,
Yeah.
developers and DevOps. I actually think this is really becoming a huge problem. I mean, our customers face it, of course, and they don't need the same quality of engineers that we need. Like, we need engineers who are in the top 5 percentiles, like the cream of the crop,
Gee, okay.
right? Because we're doing quite complex deep tech solutions.
Yeah.
And we spend an inordinate amount of effort, money, etc., right, trying to win such people. When we do, they stay with us for a long time because they actually like solving the problems that we solve, and I think they like our culture. So we have very little churn internally on those kinds of employees, but getting them is really hard. And I think this is just such a huge challenge for. I'm thinking of more deep tech companies now. In my particular case, I think that's a massive challenge.
Okay, interesting. All right, so probably my favorite question. What's your favorite business book?
My favorite business book. So there would probably be no company, no Babel Force, if I hadn't read The Art of the Start by Guy Kawasaki.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if you know that one, Scott, but it's
No, I haven't heard of that
it's
one.
a great book. So I think if you want to start any business, I would say to read that book. It's just absolutely full of gems, things that have really provided me with a framework throughout the years, especially in the early stages, really a framework to think things through, a framework to put my ideas on. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that. Guy Kawasaki has a bunch of other books as well, but for me, in starting off, The Art of the Start is the real deal.
Is he a tech founder, Guy Kawasaki?
Yeah, he himself is. He's got a massive following. If you check him out on LinkedIn, you see he's got. It's incredible how
Yeah, I've
what
heard of
kind of
him.
position he has.
Yeah.
He's he yeah, like, so for example, I think in that book one thing he talks about is, you haven't got the right resources and you haven't got the right investors, and you're not sure about XYZ, and you want to have children as well, and maybe it's the wrong time to start a startup, and you have all these. He says, just get going. I mean, you don't know whether you're going to be good at it. You might be rubbish at it, you might be really good at it, but it's actually in trying it that you're going to find out. So, like, just get going was one main mantra that we had from the beginning, which was directly from that book.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Okay. So what are you curious about or researching right now regarding SaaS or software in general?
So recently, I was spending quite a lot of time trying to figure out how to organize the engineering teams, reorganize engineering teams for the next phase of growth. And what we've been digging into actually is a book and a whole set of resources called Team Topologies. Might be also interesting for your listeners.
Right.
Team Topologies, yeah, it's research. it's a kind of a dry, it's a pretty dry book actually, right? More like a treatise or a thesis
Yeah.
on what are the real factors influencing the ability of a software team to innovate and deliver. And yeah, it's super interesting stuff. So it's about how the organizational structure actually ends up being reflected in software architecture. So we've been digging into that a lot and done a huge exercise together with all of our engineering teams, brought everybody together, spent a lot of time on that, and that's a great, really superb framework to dig into. You know, what you really need to do, like what are the next, say, 2 stages of expansion that you're going to have, and how should you structure the software and engineering teams in each stage. So that's one area. The other area, perennial, is, well, it's never over, right, with figuring out how to market and how to get, what the right mix is. So along the lines of your question earlier about email marketing, so we spend a lot of time researching how to weight things between, because we have multiple audiences. We have developers who use our APIs. We have the no code, the makers, we call them, who actually build stuff. We've got the C-level people or then VP level people, the kind of business buyer. And then we've got all the different channels, right? You've got everything from outbound calling and outbound email to events. And so doing a lot of research and a lot of trial and error on exactly what the right mixture is for our particular area. I think those are the 2 things that are where I'm reading the most on, I think, Scott, and where we all are as a team as well.
Yep. Okay, excellent. All right, and then just to wrap up, where can people go to find out more about BabelForce?
Well, a great place to start is our website, babelforce.com. And our company page on LinkedIn would also be a good place to go. You can find me on LinkedIn and on Twitter. And I think a very good site for people in the CX world, so anybody out there whose business is running a contact center, or for CX people directly involved in customer experience, we have a community that we sponsor called CX Makers. You can also find that as a group on LinkedIn. That's a great place to get involved. The motto there is beers with peers. So no, and hashtag no sales. So no sales allowed. So it's only about engaging on creating things.
Sounds great. Fantastic. All right. Thanks for coming on the show, Pierce. I appreciate it. That was great.
Thank you, Scott. Great to be here.